Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for another Skylanders week video here on the channel. Today we're reviewing Skylanders Trap Team for 4th game of the Skylanders franchise, which released in one of the best years in recent memory. I mean, seriously, this year was jam-packed with so many incredible games and films. I'm talking about, of course, 2014, the year How to Train Dragon 2 released, and that alone makes it an amazing year, but more specifically, Skylanders Trap Team was released this year within October, and it definitely shouldn't have been because giving it some extra time and development until summer of 2015 perhaps could have gave the developers more time to iron out some of the few flaws I have with this game, and in doing so they would have taken this game and elevated it from being incredible to sheer and utter perfection. But then again, no video game could possibly be perfect, and when it comes to Trap Team, despite its flaws, it's still an incredible game, as close to perfection as you can get in my personal opinion. So what we're going to be doing here is getting the flaws over and done with first, since there are so few of them, and my first main flaw with the game is just how much of a money grab it is. To access everything, you need not only a Skylander of each element, but a Trap Master of each element, since now elemental gates are locked behind Trap Masters only, which is just such an infuriating decision, which really negates the purpose of cores and acts as a huge middle finger to avid fans of the franchise who've been collecting and buying these figurines for years. Like, seriously, there was no need to do this. But not only do you need a Trap Master for every elemental gate, but also you need a trap of every single element, and that is just a huge abundance of figurines to buy and to store, and it just isn't all that necessary, especially when you think about how all of these scummy moves pile on top of one another, and it takes away from the entirety of the gameplay experience, because all you feel playing it is that the developers are after nothing other than your wallet. They aren't trying to provide a decent time for you. You can't have that fulfilling experience without dishing out the extra bucks, and that's just such a huge shame. And ultimately, whilst these decisions are nothing less infuriating, as I mentioned about previously, you can't pin this up as a fault of the game itself, because this is outside of the game's parameters. There was no way the game itself could control the greedy execution of, its mechanics and its completion ratings due to just the greed of the developers. So due to it being the result of an outside influence, a terrible one at that, it doesn't really change the overall quality of the game for me. What does, however, is just how buggy it is. Clearly, this game was not finished because glitches are a common occurrence. In fact, it's strange to get through an entire playthrough without a glitch of some sort, and that's due to the push for an annual release. Again, all of these could have so easily been ironed out with more development time, but in the case of most of these glitches, fortunately, they aren't game-breaking. And to be fair, they're more fun than anything. It's hilarious to come across a minor visual glitch, and it's a great laugh to see the game doing stuff that is not meant to do. And since they weren't intended, they can be quite rare to come by, and it makes finding all of these hidden glitches and tricks all the more satisfying. It even creates a skill gap for speedrunners due to this glitch known as a double jump, which is just so cool. So glitches requiring an element of skill is visually pleasing to watch, and even better to perform yourself, knowing that you're doing something that not everyone can do, hence the skill gap. So yes, glitches can be annoying, but more often than not, they are hilarious, making the game more fun because of it. And I love nothing more than a game which is fun, and this game most certainly is exactly that, fun. It nailed the most quintessential element of any game, to provide fun for countless hours. I simply can't express this enough. So very quickly, the flaws of this game were tipped on its head. The unique jankiness of this game is what makes it fun and unique amongst the rest of the Skylanders crowd. There is no other Skylanders game that has all of these physics glitches to this same extent, and that just makes it so much fun. And better yet is the additional gameplay improvement. Swap Force, of course, added jumping. Well, now in Trap Team, you can jump and attack at the same time. Certain characters even have unique abilities and animations for their jumping attacks. And all Skylanders have jumping attacks now. You can see with the gameplay of Dynarang here, he might be from Spyro's Adventure, but he can still attack whilst he's jumping. So, of course, they went for that extra detail to improve upon the original Skylanders to include that as part of their attack patterns. But what makes jumping attacks so great is that sometimes they can be specific to upgrade chambers as they improve these attacks to make them all more powerful and by extent all more satisfying to use. And not only do they make them more powerful as well, but a lot of jumping attacks have very unique animations and can trigger a chain of attacks which flow very well together and add more depth to the combat as they increase the amount of decisions for you to make, and it really rewards you for your on-the-spot thinking and reaction to certain situations. Like, you can perform combos but then jump out of them, for example, or you can slow down an enemy and jump attack them from a higher ledge. It's just all of these different things, just smaller things that add up to make for a more fulfilling experience, because these gameplay refinements are so much fun. And hey, just to add on top of all of that fun of unique and interesting levels to explore, I'm happy to say that Trap Team has the best level design of any Skylanders game. Yes, for those of you wondering, everything is positive from here on out. Each level has a very unique and distinctive setting which isn't seen anywhere else in gaming, let alone in Skylanders. You have levels about a zeppelin which is completely food orientated, a massive spiral and crystal in the sky, and a sewer with such a horrid smell that it can even power Traptanium. Each level has a story behind it. This background makes them feel all the more fleshed out and thought through. I love the attention to detail they gave this game. It showcases that the developers all had such fun and creative ideas. It truly is a collaborative project and the best of everybody working on it coming together. The Skylanders are no different. They all have fun and unique upgrades with great progressive upgrade chambers that add even further depth to the gameplay than that of any other Skylanders game. Each figurine is incredibly detailed with expressive molds that display such strong character that is of course correlated very well in the game, and overall there is pride in their appearance and their textures. These are characters that you just simply want to pick up and you want to play as them. Now, Trapmasters just so happen to be incredibly overpowering, so honing their power and their sense of chaos is so much fun and it's so incredibly satisfying. You can even create all sorts of different cheese if you can manipulate their gameplay chains in certain ways. For example, Crypt King, you will see more of this later on in the gameplay, where you can slow down an enemy, spawn in some bees, stun that enemy so when they are defeated, so that they are defeated before you even blink. Because you can then approach them with your incredible sword, which reasons down other swords when it crits, and that's even more stack damage. And then, when your swarm of bees is done, it heals you up afterwards. Man, what a crazy chain of events you can cheese with Crypt King, and he's just one of the finest examples of that. You can develop tactics even, with the natural depth added to the gameplay here to cheese combat situations, and it's so much fun, and that's brought about by the overall jankiness of the game and its unique feel in comparison to other Skylanders games. Now, as for the story, our Skylanders are now bounty hunters, as villains have escaped from Cloudcracker Prison. So once we hunt them down and defeat them, we can place a crystal into the portal of power to capture this villain and rehabilitate them, allowing us to play as them in our fight for good. And these crystals were fragments of Traptanium from Cloudcracker Prison itself, sent to Earth when the villains were broken out of the prison. Chaos was of course behind the breakout, but he unleashed something that not even he himself could control, the Doom Raiders. Led by Golden Queen, the main antagonist here. After 3 games of seeing Chaos fulfill that role, it's so great to have someone new to freshen that up and create a new dynamic between the villains, because they are a team of villains and naturally they have phenomenal chemistry, making their cutscenes very entertaining. And Golden Queen is still very well designed, very charismatic, and incredibly intimidating as a villain. There are consequences to our actions, like when she turns Callie to gold, and that we fear her for. It builds such great tension, and we have such motivation to progress through the story to put a stop to her and her evil plans. But of course, in the end, the chaos inevitably betrays us, resulting in an epic final battle, which is difficult, tense, and so satisfying to play through. It's a bit of a marathon, to be frank, and I love its difficulty to make it more distinctive than that of other Chaos final boss battles. Its constant concentration required to beat it successfully is really what immerses you in the moment, and it's such a great feeling to defeat Chaos in the end, because now there is a special trap which will allow you to play as Chaos himself, which is the true final reward of beating the game, given how overpowering and fun Chaos is to play as. Now, Chaos isn't the only great boss fight in the game, because all of the Doom Raiders have unique attack and patterns, and a grand scale and scope to their fights to make them all unique in terms of how you deal with them. Like, for example, you have Chompy Mage, where you need to platform and avoid all his shockwaves, Dr. Crankcase, where you need to use the conveyor belts in the area to avoid being hit and leading him directly into the saw blades. And then there's Golden Queen, which is kind of like a combination of the two, with shockwaves, golden turrets to avoid, and falling platforms. They're all so much fun to play through, and there is such creativity put into their attack patterns to really match their designs and personalities, and ultimately make the fight itself really unique to them. Words alone simply can't express how well designed and creative all of these bosses and levels are in combination with one another. The motivation they create for you to play on is unrivaled, and you just have such insane levels of fun playing through this game. I'm still yet to touch the surface of the awesomeness behind this game, because next up comes the NPCs. There are fewer brand new NPCs this time around, with Mags and Buzz being the only real major ones added to the roster of NPCs. Both of them have incredible chemistry with our returning characters in the form of Flynn and Callie. To watch them all interact with one another is very entertaining, since they all have their unique and distinctive charm. Except Buzz, who has a similar arrogant and lovable feel to that of Flynn, and that definitely raises the theories about Buzz potentially being Flynn's father, and that alone is intriguing, and the writers building up the character in this manner and creating just such great interactions between Flynn and Buzz are just so entertaining. The writers were very competent and knew exactly what they were doing with this due to their similarities, but neither of them see themselves in one another. You know, there's kind of a denial due to their natural arrogance of their character. But all of the other characters around them realise this, so in other words, all of the NPCs remain in character to create the greatest comedic tone and entertainment value of any set of NPCs thus far in the Skylanders franchise. And again, it's that dramatic irony, Flynn and Buzz not really knowing that their characters are practically one the same, and yet as us, the audience, and all the other NPCs can notice all of that, and that's just ultimately what makes their interactions with one another just so much more entertaining, just, again, that dramatic irony and all that. And I would say I would happily interact with any of these NPCs because they all have such unique and fun things to say. In fact, that's exactly what I'm saying I'm happy to do. Their dialogue is unique to them and delivered with such dexterity from the voice actors who really care about their craft even. I said crap by accident, my apologies for that, but they absolutely aren't phoning it in even, because no doubt they love this writing and how full of charisma these lines are. Music this time around is lacking in originality and the flair. However, that's not to say it isn't good. In fact, the original soundtrack for this game is still incredible. However, it's shameful where it came from, because rather than having Lorne Balfe return as composer, instead, Activision just bought royalties to pre-existing tracks. It just so happens that a grand majority of those tracks are copyrighted, so to avoid all that, I have the giant soundtrack in the background instead, because I'm scared to utilise the Trap Team one, and it's a huge shame that we don't have that originality, really, and the ability to use the soundtrack, because, again, Activision don't own it, so people that they bought the royalties from have a copyright over it, so therefore, again, I can't emphasise this enough, I cannot use it. So, when it comes to the royalty tracks that they've chosen, they still are extremely memorable and incredibly fitting for the level themes and settings, and they create an overall sense of scope and tone, just as what the Lorne Balfe tracks did. So the music is this great extension of the level's themes to further invest you into this world of Skylands, because the tone and pace of the music feels appropriate to this world, and it increases your enjoyment and pacing of the levels themselves tenfold. And I'm saying this twice just to emphasise the fact that the music is still great. I do really wish we had the same original music as what Lorne Balfe brought to the table, but this is a fine substitute that still offers up some really fun and unique tracks to listen to. I haven't yet finished expressing my love for the levels yet though, because beyond being incredibly unique, creative and really fun, they are also perfect in length, which is what makes the pacing of this game so fast, since specific portions of the levels at hand don't outstay their welcome or drag on for too long. And even when they do, there are neat little distractions such as exploration, because collectibles here are the finest balance of quantity and quality we've ever seen. There's a perfect number of collectibles to make each level feel full, and the collectibles themselves are rewarding enough to be fully worth seeking out. Some of them are really well hidden, so being clever enough to find them is really satisfying. You even have troll radios which give you different music tracks to enjoy, and changing the channel enough will reward you with gold, so they are also well worth looking around for and having a little play about with. Whilst the game itself doesn't look as great as Swap Force, it still has flush and detailed textures and colours which really pop. Walking over water grants little rippling effects, which is visually dazzling and very immersive due to the realism of it. But now it's time to return back to the gameplay as well, since I've merely but scratched the surface about that. Villains have a tag team motion with the Skylanders, and they are given a timer rather than a health bar, so that starts running down as soon as they are tagged in, and once that timer is used up, you can't use that villain again until the timer regenerates. Certain villains are created to aid your Skylander, so you constantly tag between the two of them to buff up your Skylander and ease combat, rather than the other villains who can go crazy and deal large chunks of damage for a short amount of time. This encourages you to experiment with different Skylander and villain combinations, so once you find one that works really well, it's very rewarding to absolutely cream your enemies with your fast-paced tag team in. The decision making behind when to tag your villain in and when to return back to your Skylander also gives you more things to think about in the midst of battle, making your coordination and choices just string together all the more fluently, and all the different inputs you have to consider are all just so satisfying to perform. It really adds to the fun value of the game, which I know I'm saying that word a lot, and that's because that's the word of the review. If I had to summarise this game up in one word, it would absolutely be fun, because it maintains your concentration and by extent your immersion more vigorously, and it never lets that immersion go due to just how incredible this gameplay motion is. Villains, just like Skylanders, also have unique and creative designs. Just thinking about how many unique and creative character designs these developers came up with makes my brain hurt, because not a single one is anything less than cool. And better yet, you have no reason, you have a reason even, to get to love these villains and care for their stories based on their personality traits. I, for one, really reminisce with Titan Quo and find his energy inspiring and his charisma is beyond entertaining, and that's merely an example. We can all be left with a space to relate and enjoy different villains for different reasons, is what I'm trying to say, even if you could say I'm saying it terribly. But regardless, even the post-game content is as close to perfection as you can get. You have the standard arena battles, sure, which are also really hard and really rewarding, like the bosses scattered throughout the game. But the hub world here is huge, so exploring that alone becomes something fun to do, and a long task to freshen up the gameplay experience a little bit. The mini platforming games and even Guitar Hero style timed button presses make this hub world feel expansive, and the design of its structure is so creative and very well thought through. I love the Academy here. What I also love is the Chaos Doom Challenge. It's a wave-based mode where between waves you can create towers of specific elements to deal with hordes of enemies which bombard you in pursuit of breaking open the Mystery Box of Doom, which contains one super powerful enemy which you really don't want to deal with, believe in me. The natural bombardment of enemies causes chaos. You need constant concentration even to keep from the towers being destroyed by enemies. My apologies that I got a little lost for words right there. I lost the place of my script. But getting back on the script, quite literally, you want to ensure that your towers aren't destroyed, and you need to, you know, keep your attention diverted amongst all of them, which is where the concentration comes in, because simply put, you're rewarded in between each wave they survive, and the mode is also very progressive, as each wave does indeed get harder and harder in terms of how difficult the enemies themselves are and the sheer abundance of them. Waves are just so fast-paced, they absolutely flash on by due to the chaotic nature and how rewarding that is when you concentrate and fully immerse yourself in it. Also, it offers up a fair challenge, which I love putting myself up for. In conclusion, what's not to love about this game? You can take a lifeless trap with no character inside it, and suddenly you defeat a villain and can place this lifeless trap into the portal to capture their life essence. In other words, you're bringing life to the toy, a reverse of the business model of Toys to Life, which is beyond clever, and it truly sells you on the illusion, since there is a speaker, so it's as if this villain, by extent, is living within the toy and it's speaking to you. It can get annoying, so thank heavens the developers were merciful and gave us the option to turn it off. So now, everyone is happy. You still have the magic of no longer bringing your toys to life, but bringing life to toys. These traps play such an integral part to the game's story. I love how it takes advantage of the gimmick and reminds me of the good old Spyro's Adventure days. So the style of the game and its fourth wall break and role assignment, it's of course reliance on both of those to immerse you into this world, is what gives me such a kick of nostalgia, and it's incredibly fun, ensuring that a smile is put on my face every single time I return to this game. And it's also perfect in terms of pacing, with excellent designs that are unique in setting and structure to make it fun and fresh each time you tackle a new level, which is what you want to do, because they're also great, as are fleshed out and creative boss fights. It's unbelievable for unrivaled originality which went into this game. I marvel at the developers, because this is Skylanders' masterpiece. In terms of gaming as a whole, this game does lack the polish, unfortunately, which can contribute to its lack of a masterpiece type title. But in terms of Skylanders, this is the masterpiece of their franchise, something to be really proud of. So within this context, yes, I wouldn't hesitate to call Trap Team Skylanders' masterpiece. But that basically does it for this here review. I'll be seeing you tomorrow for my Superchargers review, but until that moment arises, peace, and thank you so much as always for watching.